Welcome everybody to our Friday energy talk and online meditation here on Skype with the energy tips for this week. Just a quick disclaimer here. This session is being recorded and posted on my website, my Facebook page, and my YouTube channel. So if you don't want your face on the recording, then turn off your video. We do these online meditations every day, and on Fridays at noon, I'm adding the energy tips for the next week. So this coming week, the May the 14th, starting today until May 21st is the week 21. And as many of you have already noticed, we have a lot going on, not just in the world, also within ourselves. And 2 weeks back, I talked about core fears and what this can do for us and how this can challenge our inner integrity, how this confrontation with really deep, irrational fears can make us do things. It can trigger our autopilot. It can make us wanting to escape. It can make us become very, very mental. It can do a lot of things, but none of these things that these core fears trigger in us actually lead to more harmony or lead to more connection. And with this new moon that we just had, these core fear subjects from a month ago, like 5 weeks ago, they are all coming back in. So it's like we go into a second round, but this time we've had some time to think it over, to reprioritize, to look at what really matters to us, to our values. We have this big theme in 21 where we have to learn to wiggle our way through this duality between wanting to progress, wanting things to, well, go back to normal for some of us, but at the same time also wanting more security. And so 2021 is a very pivotal year for all of us collectively. And that shows in all these inflammatory processes that we see, that we can observe in the world here in our current events. Now, inflammation from an energetic point of view is a process where there's an overproduction of something. So if we go back to this very fundamental understanding of what balance really is, where we have this in and out, the ins and outs of life, in an energetic sense, represented through the in-breath and the out-breath. Yeah, things build up in us and then they have to be released so that we can maintain our balance. And balance always means the state of highest inner integrity, because when we are in balance, you guys know this, right? Then outer things don't really faze us this much. And core fears happen to function like a wrench in the gears. They kind of stop this in and out breath in a literal way. Many of us have this shallow breathing and conditions that come with this, such as anxiety and so forth, where we no longer are able to hold our inner balance. And inflammation is the part of this energetic metabolism in us, this in and out of energies, yeah, that's what we let in and what we express, what we let out, where there is not enough release, there's not enough coming out, there's not enough out breath. That's why all yogic techniques and therapeutic breathing techniques all remind a person to take a longer out breath, because the release of energies is what needs to happen for most of us, because we have a tendency to hold in. And inflammation is when this gets out of hand, this happens within ourselves on a physical level when we have an inflammation. It's a protection mechanism of our body, and it's really our first responder reaction to something ain't right. Okay, and basically our entire immune system starts to get activated and goes against it. Usually in a healthy immune system, there's sort of a metabolism of that as well, and then the excess, white blood cells and all that is involved in this immune response gets slowly worked up. It's the lymphatic system in our body that does that for us. Emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, it's a little more complex because there are situations where we cannot actually express or release things in the wanted way. And so we have a tendency, if you look at your entire being as sort of these different bodies, your physical body, your emotional body, your mental body, your spiritual body, and then your etheric body, as these multidimensional aspects of you, they all interact with another. And inflammation on this overall sort of holistic perspective always means that there's too much buildup. There's not enough release. And so this person cannot hold their inner integrity. They cannot hold their own state of health, state of balance overall, which means all outer influences, everything that we let in, doesn't get processed, doesn't get metabolized correctly, and starts having an effect on all these different bodies in us. So part of my energy tip is to break this down for you. And when I break it down to the physical, I want to encourage you all to pay a little more attention to your lymphatic system, to activate it, to literally get these juices flowing in you that on this cellular level are responsible for how well you release. Obviously, there's our renal system, our kidneys, and also our bladder, also our liver and gallbladder and pancreas and so forth. They all part of this. But when you stimulate your lymphatic system, you immediately sort of speed up your own physical energy, and a lot of more balancing processes can happen. Does anybody know how to stimulate your lymphatic system the fastest way? I mean, there's many alternative healing modalities that help us to do that, but what's the fastest thing that we can do to get these juices flowing? There's two things we can do on our own. Yes, well, increasing our outbursts, that is part of the overall sort of balancing act or harmonizing act that we need to do. Yes, Cheryl, you're correct. Jump, walk, run, get our body to move, okay? Mini trampoline, jump rope, wonderful suggestions here from you guys. All the things that produce a little bit of impact on our body, they immediately make our body react, and our systems, you can feel this emotionally, feels good. I often actually recommend people to punch a bag because there's a stronger emotional impact to that. Hot and cold water, that's right, Annette, thank you for sharing that. Hot and cold showers, or any kind of sauna and cold water, or steam baths, or hot tub and cold water. These things are really simple. We can all do them. We don't have to book a session for a lymph drainage or anything like that. These things are very effective, acupuncture, reflexology, for our lymphatic system. But if we just want to add a new routine to our life that helps us to overall stimulate our physical body, to help with the transport of toxic substances, toxic processes, toxic emotions, toxic thoughts, or toxic energies, then that's the fastest way to do this, guys. Now, when it comes to collective inflammation of things that we see in our politics, that we see in our financial markets, that we see in geopolitics, and also, in regards to our planet, it's not that easy, obviously. But what we can learn from this holistic understanding about inflammation, and when things sort of get out of hand, when there's too much built up and not enough release, is why these things have to happen. So eventually this cycle, okay, of not enough release, where there's too much buildup, needs to burst. It needs to come out. And this is what we are experiencing right now. And the bigger picture for this, the mental image that you can hold in your mind, is that when we all want to grow, and this is sort of this one side of this duality in 2020, where we want progress, we want things to move forward. It's been a while, since collectively we've experienced this time as so restrictive, that we all want things to move forward. We want resolutions in regards to Corona. We want all this to somehow resolve itself, to be released. It's a very, very powerful energy that it cures when a whole collective thinks into this direction. And the mental image is that we are literally sort of moving into expansion. We want to expand, we want to grow, we want to transform, but we don't really have a good foundation for this yet. So things seem to be more like sort of like powder kegs, okay? So that we let too much in, it builds and builds and builds, and then it explodes. So it's this pendulum that you can keep as a mental image here, where when we try to break free from one restriction, we have a tendency to go too far on the other end, and that then leads to imbalance in the opposite direction. And it takes a while for this pendulum to find its equilibrium. Now, from an energetic point of view, growth, expansion is a very positive thing. It leads to increase of consciousness. This is why people like myself, forecasters and spiritual teachers, are generally very optimistic, because this is what is needed. The confrontation with untruth, the confrontation with what doesn't work is needed for us to grow. We are designed to grow through this confrontation, through elimination, through what doesn't work for us. Our entire physiology is designed this way, that we learn the fastest through pain. But we also have this other side of our physiology that tries to avoid pain. And so when it comes to our core fears, as we worked this out a few weeks ago, there is a component of that. We call this the fear of the fear, or the fear of the pain, that we need to actively and consciously work with. It's a mental component. It's what we hold in mind. It's the mental image that we hold in mind. And if we are not very conscious, if we just go sort of what is being implanted into our mind through this collective inflammation, or through media, through all sorts of mind control techniques, then we don't really know how to metabolize this correctly. And we have a tendency to get pulled into our own inner dualism, into our own inner imbalance. So all this talk here really just as a preface to what my energy tips are here for this next week, namely, stay cool, stay in balance. And if you don't know how to balance, pay attention to your physical balance, because that's the fastest way to shift your energy. Pay attention to the emotions that you allow to take over. Our ego has a tendency to go into autopilot, into this addictive coping mode when our fears are being triggered. And just so you guys know, on this mental imagery of the pendulum, fear and fear-based thoughts are very low in vibratory rate, and they actually lead us to darkness. And so do the opposite, the thoughts that trigger some kind of escapism, or where we just want to avoid, just want to escape from everything, or where we just look up for external solutions, also leads to darkness, guys. So if we want to at least maintain our own light and stay connected with it, it's important for us to learn how to manage that, to learn how to manage our emotions, along with our body, obviously, but also the mental image that we keep in mind, because those have very important or very detrimental consequences for our spiritual and energetic template, if you will, for sort of the energy codes that we hold. And even if you don't know what energy codes are, it doesn't matter. Template codes, those are lingo words. Just remember one thing. We are indeed made out of 97% of nothingness, if you go down to the atomic level. And what keeps all of us and here in 3D together, in form of minerals, in form of animals, in form of nature, in form of humans, is the etheric template that composes this 3D reality. And this is the reason why so many talk about the power of the mind. Well, the mental image that we keep in mind influences our etheric template, and that then creates reality. This is really the advanced version of these manifestation mechanics, the law of attraction, not correctly illustrated through some of the popular documentations. It does happen in us first, but there is a big but to this. Most people are not aware of the mental imagery that they keep. They think if they do a vision board, or if they have some kind of dream that they put up there on a pedestal, some kind of ideal, that could help to change reality, and it actually doesn't. Because the mental imagery is not the ideal. The mental imagery is the fact that we don't have that. So most of us really come from a place of lack and fear of pain. We want relief. And so we create imagery that it serves the relief of our pain. And I don't know if you could follow me here, but the big part of the tip that I have for you here for this next week is to pay attention with what your mental imagery is based on. If it's based on fear, or if it's based on love or expansion. It's very important that we understand that if we want to grow, we cannot harbor, we cannot foster constrictive thoughts, emotions, or physical vibrations. The whole entire planet Earth is expanding, is speeding up its energies. And we as humans, as part of this planet, have to go into that expansion process along with the planet and our entire collective consciousness. And that means that we have to make changes, guys. We can't just talk about it, and we can't just use mental imagery. We have to really pay attention to the vibrators, the vibes, the vibratory energies that we foster, that we hold. This week is a testing week for you guys. It's supposed to test if you're really serious in your attempts, in your striving for higher vibratory being, for growing into this higher vibratory state that we can all grow into. But we have to make changes, because we have been existing in a lower vibratory state for most of our lives. And that means that our vessel, our container with which, our vehicle with which we embody this journey into a higher consciousness, needs to speed up as well. And that is, guys, what we are experiencing right now. That is the cause for the inflammation. So Work with your thoughts, work with your emotions, work with your body, work with the spiritual imagery that you keep in mind. And as always, the fastest way to do this by yourself is through breathing, through conscious breathing. Breathe in through the nose, breathe out through your mouth. Hold it. I recommend I am breathing, where you actually involve your throat, you involve your voice and say I as you breathe in and M as you breathe out. It's very, very powerful, energetic clearing and centering technique. And allow yourself to go into these deeper states of consciousness that remind you of what this higher thinking, higher feeling, higher being in you is all about. Yeah, so this week is about alignment. Yeah, so when I say testing, you need to actively go into this testing. You need to test your own alignment. What is this thought? What is this emotion? What is this action based on? Yeah, how am I treating myself? How am I treating others? Where am I coming from? That's my alignment. And that, my friends, forms your etheric body. It forms your etheric template, and with it also your 3D reality. So we have a lot of reasons for optimism. Things have popped open a little bit, but it's just like when you have an inflammation somewhere in your skin and it hurts and then it pops open. It's not quite yet a really nice process. There's a lot of discharge, and this is what I recommend you guys to embrace the discharge, because that's literally your body, all your body, your holistic body, trying to process, trying to metabolize all these things, all these negative feelings, these lower vibratory energies that you've been holding in all these years. So thank you for listening to the energy tips for this coming week. Just a real quick reminder, we have our monthly free energy session that is publicly available tomorrow, Saturday the 15th. By the time you watch this, is probably today, at noon US Eastern time. So if you're in Europe, it's either 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. in the afternoon. If you are in Australia, it can be anywhere from midnight to 3 a.m. I apologize for those bad times for the Australians and New Zealanders and Asians. Here we change the times every month, and this is an opportunity for you to learn how to connect with this higher self via this energy field that we hold for you during this session, where you connect with your true self, the mediator between your higher self and your ego self. So that's tomorrow, Saturday 15th of May at 12 p.m. noon US Eastern time, and we read out your energies during this session and have a live webinar afterwards where we reflect this back to you. So if you come to the webinar after the energy session, you can actually inquire about your own energies and get some life tips from me, personalized to you. So guys, yeah, this is the energy talk that we have. I picked step 6, divine consciousness for us. And those of you who are in the Sacred Self-Healing course, in the online course, the Experience online course, the members, you will receive an invitation for our Sunday workshop, which is called Spiritual Being. So we've been forming a series here over the last 4 weeks, spiritual feeling, spiritual thinking, and tomorrow on Sunday we'll have the spiritual being, which links into what I just talked about in the energy tips, namely understanding that we are more than just this materialistic, machinistic sort of bag of cells or bag of flesh. We are much more. We are all a spiritual being. We are a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. And this step 6, which comes with the workbook, which comes with exercises in the online course, and this particular meditation as the energy process for this awareness, reminds us that spirit is not just some belief based. It's a real connection. It's a real need that we all have as humans. We all at some point in our life feel the need to connect with a form of higher power, and we, without being fully aware of it, perhaps even have had spiritual experiences. If we are not part of any kind of organized religion, we may not be able to find the right words for this because we might not recognize it as such. But I want you guys to understand that a big part of this harmonizing process that we are all in right now has to do with making this spiritual experience conscious. So everything that I do here at transCODES, everything that I teach, every session that I do is about the inner experience of your own spirituality, not me teaching you should-bes or ideals or something, but it's supposed to activate your own self-healing and, your own inner spiritual connection. That's why I mentioned the free session that I've now been doing for almost 10 years tomorrow, because that's an opportunity for us to move into a space where we can do this. And these daily meditations, these daily online meditations here on Skype allow us to do this live together. Yes, so when I turn on the meditation, it's going to be a little boring. You can turn off your videos. You're just going to see me there with my eyes closed for 20 minutes. Now, don't pay attention during your own meditation, but if you watch the video afterwards, you'll see how I go into these deeper states. Has anybody noticed that? You can see this on my face. You can see when I'm no longer the body that speaks to you right now. I'm in a different place. Just for curiosity's sakes here for you, this is what you look like when you go into a deeper state. And it is not important that you have a certain position, that you wear red socks or do any kind of mudras or lay down or, do some kind of acrobatic poses. You can if you want to, but it's not important for our inner connection. If there are things that, such as posture, sometimes people can have bad posture. It can sort of block the flow a little bit. So it's very important to sort of kind of find this best place with yourself, okay? Like what feels the most relaxed, how you can hold your own balance without having to use muscles, and keeping your spine erect if you can, simply because there's a lot of nerves, there's a lot of neural pathways in our spine, and obviously energy goes where there's a lot of electricity, and that's why a lot of spiritual teachings refer to the spine, sort of the vessel for this Kundalini life force being transported through our system. It is much more complex than that. It's much bigger, our etheric body, than we are. It extends, for people who are trained in their energy, can extend miles, thousands and millions of miles outside of the body without ever leaving or losing the connection to the body. So those are all things that I train here with you in these energy courses that I have, energy awareness trainings. If you were interested in this, you can book a free initial energy coaching session with me, and then we can work out a roadmap for you. Any comments, any questions about any of the topics that I've mentioned here? Does any one of you remember a time where you may have not had this spiritual background or the reading that you have now, but in hindsight, where you recognize that this may have been an early spiritual experience, maybe from your childhood even. You know, I never thought about it until I was asked. And then I realized that I actually had quite a few spiritual experiences as a child, some of which had to do with music and singing. I wasn't aware of this. We weren't a family that would go to church, so there was no context for me. And also when I was with animals, I was a city girl, and whenever I visited the countryside and maybe when there were animals there, I would spend hours with these animals in this almost meditative state myself. And then later as a teenager, I went through a very rough time. I do actually recall a moment where I was ready to let go of my own soul, where I felt something that was pulling me back. Some people call this angels, some people call this spirit guides. Doesn't matter. A spiritual experience is a spiritual experience. Do you guys remember anything like this? Something where you felt perhaps something like an intervention from your higher self. Obviously, I'm contextualizing divine consciousness as part of us, so our higher self basically being sort of the executive of the divine source.
Jona, I had one of those. I had a full-on near-death experience when I was 5. I had jumped into a very deep pool and was unable to swim.
Okay.
And I asked my parents if I could go in, and they said no, and they got distracted. So I jumped in, and I remember the music and the light, and I remember just leaving, but not. I can see in hindsight, it still scares me a little bit right now, but I wasn't afraid. I was just going, going. My father jumped into me. It, in hindsight, it changed my whole life. It gave me perspective on death that I didn't realize until maybe I was 30 and could remember the whole circumstance. So
Cheryl, you're breaking up a little bit. It's very hard to hear you, but I think I got the gist. It's something almost like a near-death experience you're describing.
yeah,
Which is
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people actually recognize as spiritual experiences. A lot of books written about this. And yes, you weren't scared back then, right?
Not at all. It wasn't scary at all. I mean, I didn't know that I was dying, and when I was 5, but it was just very beautiful. And I just remember almost being angry that my dad pulled me out. And I wasn't in a bad place. I was just a naughty 5-year-old.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us, Cheryl, because I mean, we mystify those kind of things sometimes. But when you contextualize it in this way that you recognize that there is some kind of spiritual power inside of you, yeah, that is somehow connected to what I call the divine Wi-Fi, right? That intervenes at times. Yeah, sometimes it intervenes in these accidental near-death kind of situations, kind of like as no, it's not your time yet. Sometimes it also intervenes with crisis. Has any one of you have had an experience that you in hindsight would call a spiritual experience, but that was brought on maybe by going through a divorce, or maybe by going through the loss of a loved one, or losing money, losing a job, losing, the full-on confrontation with this existential fear, what that can feel like. Of course, we first resist the crisis, right? Nobody wants to go through a crisis. But does any one of you, I saw some thumbs up here, so I guess you kind of know what I'm talking about. Sometimes this, some call it spirit, comes in form of very transformative experiences, catharsis, as it's often called in psychology, where we experience intense fear, intense loss, intense pain, maybe even some kind of diagnosis. All right, these are all reminders that we are more than just our body, guys. We are more than just this mechanic sort of machine that has a physical metabolism. This is what you need to understand, guys. This is the big transformation right now. The way we are being programmed to see ourselves, the mental image that we are being fed, is that we are like a machine, that we are like a computer, and that we have to function perfectly. And if we don't, then we are bad or not good enough, or we don't even have a right to be here. And it is often in those situations, especially when it's something very 3D, that we have to make a choice. We have to choose if we want to see ourselves this way, or if we want to align ourselves to this higher spiritual being in us. And that's more or less, in a more spiritual way, the same things I just said in the energy tips, which is why I picked step 6 from our 24-step experience, spoken by Jeff. So you guys can lean back, enjoy 20 minutes of going and connecting through an energy process. We will need to make a quick sound check. Make sure you guys can hear the music. I'm sorry that I have to call you out of this beautiful state. If you are part of the Sacred Self-Healing Experience online course, you have those energy processes. Very, very beautiful process here today with you. Lots of imagery. And from my end, the strongest impact I felt was as I was sort of trying to get relaxed and breathing. First of all, I noticed that my breathing was quite irregular. And then suddenly I felt all my joints pop. And it reminded me of how much tension, how much physical tension I hold in. And this is, if it's just for that, it's already beautiful, because we can really learn to allow ourselves to release those energies, whether they come from the emotional, from the mental, the spiritual, doesn't matter. Times like this are times where we all hold a lot of tension. So yes, use meditation for release, otherwise it leads to inflammation. Arthritis is such an inflammation. Okay, guys, we gotta come to an end. Thank you so much for being here. I see you members on Sunday, to be precise, at 4 p.m. Eastern US time for the workshop Spiritual Being. Beautiful. Thank you all. Bye-bye.